Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. I am your host, Darlene Holly, and I am so excited to be here today with Michele Risa. She is the CEO of Collaborative Solutions, and she's had her business since 1991 as an executive consultant specializing in trust, engagement, and talent optimization. Welcome, Michele, to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Darlene. I am too. Happy to be with you.
Well, before we dive too far in, I would love to hear just a little bit about you. You've had your business since 91, which is amazing. I love that. And I'd love to hear what did you do before you started your business and how did you come to doing the work that you're doing today?
Okay, thanks. So before my business, I was an executive at Citibank and had been through different corporations, like prior to that, Ogilvy and Mather, which is an advertising agency. But so throughout the 80s, pretty much in the corporate world. And I would say by the time I reached Citi, I knew the corporate world was not for me. And it was quite a competitive environment. And and I was also in charge of marketing, which is not my sweet spot. And I quit. Everyone, of course, in my family thought I was crazy. Like, what are you doing? And to which I, thank God, was following my North Star. So maybe this is relevant for some of the people in your audience, to follow my heart, and also have trust in myself, whereas of course many worried, and I understand they cared for me, so they worried about my ability to, find something else. And thank God I thought and knew I would. And one of the characteristics I'll just say is I knew I would never stop looking. I knew I would not compromise. I knew I deserved, to live a life that I really thrived in. And I also knew I was resilient,
Yes.
and so I'll just put a pin in how important I have then learned and since, how important it is to begin to know who we are, and what we're committed to,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, and so that enabled me to go from certainly a position, as I say, that was not very gratifying, to then beginning my own business. And it was called, as you said, Collaborative Solutions. And I love the name because I still love it. I mean, I'm about collaboration. And when we were chatting just earlier, we were talking about this competition versus collaboration. And for me, I understand, the competitive nature. I grew up in that. I was living that while in the corporate world. You had to compete. They insisted that you compete. And I would say I'm now all about collaboration with others, realizing how critical it is. Yes, you can do much on your own. I'm not diminishing that, but how much more, and I'll speak for myself, I get done when I just collaborate with one other person. And
Yes.
how much more with two or three? I mean, I just recently formed, hired 3 interns. And the four of us, getting together is awesome. So I'll just say of course, you need to have a sense of how to, if you're leading it, how to, I'll give some tips, leaving open the space to be a trusted space. People will not share freely if they feel judgment and they feel they're going to be rejected or there's a right and wrong, right? As opposed to, Darlene, just tell me what you think. And Michele, what do you think? And whoever's listening to this, what do you think? And truly recognizing that it's just, if I had my hand, what do you see looking at it from this way, or the tree, or whatever? We look at something from a multitude of perspectives, we see it differently. And
Yeah.
different doesn't mean less than or more than. So I'll leave it there, but yes. And that's where diversity, equity, and inclusion come in. I know our country is trying to kill it. And I think there are, and I've spoken with many CEOs of major companies that may get rid of the DEI names, words, so that they're not confronted with threats or abuse, but they really understand what I just described. For innovation, uh, you need to look at I mean, if you're creating something, you need to see it from a variety of points of views. And then you decide, right? How can I innovate? As opposed to if you have the answer, if you think you have the answer, you probably don't.
Yeah. And that's such a big part when we think about like community and collaboration and bringing different people in the team from different walks of life, different cultures, different backgrounds, all those pieces. Like we bring so much to the table when we have more people in the conversation with different viewpoints and different experiences. And I think when we pull that out, we lose so much in those moments.
And key, and Darlene, exactly. But why are people so? Because we're sensing fear, we're sensing rejection, we're sensing judgment. We're going to be told we're wrong, right? So there's a reason why people go, I want everyone to look like me, sound like me, believe like me, speak like me. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And once we understand why, I'm reacting that way, right? It's being open, right, to different points of view and recognizing, listening or accepting, I'll use that word, different points of view, doesn't mean agreement. I mean, right now you've chosen, I don't know, it's maureen, I don't know what color, brownish color.
True.
You so much, couldn't find it. So it looks like a maroon top. It's fine, whatever color it is. I'm wearing a white top. Should we debate which is better to wear? Now we can, but I can accept you wearing maroon, and maybe you can accept me wearing white. It doesn't mean that that's the top you need to choose for you. I
Yeah.
mean, I know I'm just using a very silly example, but truly, if you keep that metaphor, you can say, all right, I can accept and not necessarily agree. You made your choice, I made mine.
Yeah.
We can still have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. You made me think when you were talking about like accepting our differences. Something that I think back to when I started my business, I was so worried about fitting in
Mhm.
because when I think back to like high school and middle school, that's kind of what our society trains us to is we want to fit in with the crowd, we want to be accepted, we want to be like everybody else. We're wearing the same, the same clothing, we're doing our hair the same styles. And then that didn't work for me when I started my own business. Like I couldn't blend in anymore. I had to find ways to stand out and to share my story and put myself in a position to where people would take notice. And, I could use my voice and ask for what I want and put myself in a position of power in those moments. I'm curious when you think about how you work with the leaders inside of organizations, how do you really bring out who they truly are so that they can stand out and get their message to the people that they're working with?
Similar to what I just said, it is creating a very safe container or space that is initiated through trust, right? Do they trust to even speak their truth,
Mm,
right? They can't, they won't, right? And so the environment in which they are is important. And, certainly it's an iterative process, where we speak more superficially. Hi, how are you? Fine. That, to really answering more authentically and transparently. But that again often requires greater trust
yeah.
and understanding. I'm sensing even from our brief previous conversation, we're not concerned about being rejected here or rude to each other or not anything but accepting and I'll use this word, Socratic inquiry. I love Socrates. Let's keep asking. He was a pretty smart guy, at least that's my opinion. You don't need to agree with me, but I love just being curious and asking, right? And I think just that is even just having that environment, right? No answers. And this is really, touch, not needing to know,
Mm,
not wanting to know, right? Being okay and not knowing and being like Socrates, just asking, oh, really, Darlene, what makes you say that? What experience did you have that led you to that point of view or value, right?
Mm.
How did that come about? As opposed to, and I'll just, one more little, I don't know, value is to not assume. We assume so much. I mean, what did you assume if you saw my top being white and curly? I don't know. I'm just saying, again, being
Yeah.
silly. I'm being silly, but other people could make an assumption,
Yeah.
right? And you might ask, what made you choose that? And I could tell you, as opposed to you assuming.
Yeah. I think it's important that we do get curious. When I was a little girl, my mom used to call me nosy, but I've learned since then that I'm actually just a curious person. And it's what makes me an excellent coach, I think, is that my ability to ask really good questions and get curious and really dig in and find out what really is going on. So we can, start a conversation from there and be able to see from two different angles, or if it's a group, adding more of those people into it. What do
And
you,
so I'll just say that. So notice when you did something, you now say, I'm curious, and she called it nosy. And there's a very different
oh yeah.
vibration, right? That we receive, oh, you're nosy versus, oh, you're curious. So I again ask your audience to look at our language and when we label something, right? How powerful that is,
Mm.
right? I
Yeah.
would say many of us feel curiosity is okay. Nosy, maybe not so much.
Yeah. It's the context of the words and what's used behind it in those moments.
And the meaning, I mean, I think even, the denotation, not only the connotation is there.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about the work that you do and how you're supporting people, what do you think is one of the biggest insights that you found over the years and the best way that you've been able to help people from the things that you've seen?
The biggest insight. There's several, there's many, 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 many. I would even speak as I do a lot of work in the Middle East and North Africa. Not that it doesn't exist here in the United States. However, it's just more evident that, what we were brought up to hear, like you mentioned the being nosy. There was one woman who was so bright and delightful. Her name was Ibtisam, and she lives in Morocco. And I would say when we were talking about, her earning money, she said, "Oh, no, no, no. I don't want to earn money because if I do, I'll need to leave my husband and I really don't want to." And I just, had to have a conversation with her, which I'll just practice what I just preached. I asked, "Well, what makes you say that?" You know, and as I'm suggesting, her culture basically says, well, they've seen when women start earning money, they become very independent. And they've seen women as a result were previously, right, without economic independence, they would stay
Mhm.
with their husbands, but with economic independence, they leave. And
Mm.
that's not what she wanted to do. So I would say, you know, to question our conditioning, right? And when we hit up against some resistance, to ask ourselves, what's causing that?
Yeah.
Where did I get that belief? We can do self-inquiry as well
Hmm.
and see what might be stopping us. And let me just say that as a result of my conversation with her, it was an aha moment for her. It's like, oh, right, but this one of the sentences was, money doesn't determine who we are, right? We determine how we use money,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't have a power over us, though I appreciate, we can certainly fall into the latter. And yeah, I would say that conditioning is a big one. And I would still using conditioning, Darlene, as the core is I grew up, and maybe yourself and others listening to this, where to do. Like, what did you do today? At least my mother asked me that question a lot. Maybe many others do, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't asked, who were you today? Who are you right now? Not what do you want to do? Or even if I said, what do you want to be? Meaning not so much firefighter, police officer, or nurse or teacher, right? But rather, who who will you be as a human being?
Yeah.
And what contribution will you make? What contribution did you make today? Is a
Yeah.
different question.
Yeah. And
So I
it's a
hope,
question that's it's not asked as often as it should be. We're so focused on like, what are you doing and how are you like, what
that's
does
right.
your day look like? We don't really focus in, especially with the younger generation, like how do we shift that generational patterning so that we're thinking about bigger and better things and making the impact and doing the good things in the world and really showing up and being who we want to be, not just doing what we think we're supposed to or we should be doing, right?
Yes, and I would say for all of us my age, and I'm so delighted to be old. And when anyone asks me, I say I'm 121 because they were carding people in a group that I was with, and they looked at me and they said, "Okay, you don't need to." And I said, "The reason you're not carding me is because I'm not 21. I'm 121." So I've decided from then on that's how old I am, and delighted to have circulated around the sun as often as I have. So I'm a pro-aging person. But what I want to say, excuse me, not but, and that's another thing. I dislike that three-letter word, but I love and. And if we want to help the younger generation learn anything, say nothing. More impactful is be it. Model it. We all know that as parents. All this, do this, should that, I mean, all of that doesn't work. Doesn't work. So just be a model for that value or suggestion, and that will be more powerful than anything else. That's another learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious because you've had your business since the early 90s, what have been some of the growth strategies that have helped you stay in business and continue to grow and continue to get more work?
I would again, let me see how to best answer that. Knowing what I don't want to do. So the marketing, as I said, was really not my strength.
Yeah.
And so one would be to recognize what you're not good at and get support or help to do that and find your sweet spot.
Mm.
I would say that the other part of surviving or even thriving is my willingness to persevere and not see things as a mistake. I'm a life learner. So here we go from nosy to curious, right? So many of us would potentially label something like a mistake, or or a misunderstanding or a challenge. And I would say, oh, it's another opportunity for me to learn and grow.
Yes.
Right? We know that those moments of challenge are times we grow. It builds character. And we're not building character when we're sitting in our comfort chair.
Yeah.
We need to. Life is a gift when we are challenged so that we get to see who we are. And I would say anyone on this planet right now is going to be is part of the challenge. We'll all be challenged with what's going on.
Yeah. Absolutely. What do you think is next for you in your business? Where do you see yourself going next? What are some things on the horizon? And how, if somebody's listening, what type of things would they expect to do if they were to work with you?
Okay. And I started that. I had been, as I said, doing this program in the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, with someone out of Dubai. And um, I guess it was maybe around October, I'm not sure, of last year. I got the intuition to grow, to go beyond that. And so I reached out to an organization in South Africa, who's a subsidiary of Coca-Cola, and someone else, maybe the company you might know is Oxfam, maybe not. Oxfam helps people throughout the world. They're in 70 different countries, I believe. They've been around a long time. And I would say, for me, one of the reasons I support them is they not only give fish, but they teach people how to fish. Yes?
Yeah.
So that's one of my values, so up my alley. And so, had totally met with them and written a proposal, and we were about to begin final negotiations on the contract, and Mr. Trump and Mr. Elon Musk decided to kill USAID, and so a lot of their funding is now on hold or not at all, and so that's not right now in the cards. At least it was going to begin, of course. And again, I'll practice what I preach. It's okay. What else? What's next? So yeah, I I hope that answers your question, right? So I am constantly looking to grow and and find new opportunities, and even when those, for
Yeah.
whatever, the same is true for the subsidiary of Coke. Part of her funding was with USAID. So yeah, we'll keep it in touch and we'll do something else.
Yeah. I mean, there's a piece to it of resiliency, right? Like
Exactly.
it's not
It's
never, it's not right now, because I can tell by just the way you're sharing about it, you're going to continue to put yourself out there, you're going to continue those conversations, and
exactly.
the doors will reopen when the time is right, we'll say. But
Right.
and not a day too soon. Hopefully it happens extremely quickly and we're able to get back in there, because there's so many great works that we can do, especially in other countries and partnerships with other people. So I love that you're putting yourself in big, bold situations where you're even going to other countries and looking to grow and be an international coach, not just only in the US, but actually like opening up doors for other people in other countries as well.
And yes, thank you. And I was actually about to say resiliency when I just took a breath and you said it for me, which was wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's again that trust in me, right?
Mhm.
It's again that yes, again I mean again, and many people would have been very upset with the current situation or my specific experience, and so I can't emphasize enough
Yeah.
that it simply goes back to, is it a loss, or is it in fact an opportunity for something totally
Yeah.
different? And it depends, and we will create that. We are such powerful humans. I mean, look
Yeah.
at what we are in our evolution, and we're now at another pivotal point in our evolution to finally step into who we really are, not
Yeah.
the limited self that maybe we've lived in, right?
Mhm.
But to truly realize, the infinite possibilities we can create. And
Yes.
it's a simple, and again, I love that you talked about it. It's the difference between either mistake and opportunity, or as you said earlier, being nosy or curious.
Yeah.
That totally shifts how we hold it. And it's not just mindset. I hear that a lot. I wanted, again, in our last, time together, it's much more than that. Mindset is just one component of it, right? In the experience that I give everyone is, I'll use a metaphor. If you or I said, "Oh, Michelle, let's become violinists," or let's become, be an athlete, right? Or a chef. I love food. Let's become a master chef. No one would be shocked if you and I then looked at each other and said, "Hey, we need to set up opportunities to practice."
Yeah.
Well, the same is true with this, how you live your life and how you experience
Yeah.
yourself and everyone in it. And there are ways to practice. I mean, I think it was, I'll just use Yo-Yo Ma as an example. He's a violinist. And he would say that when he practiced, he would not just go through the motions and practice, but every practice was imagining there were thousands of people and he was literally on stage and this was it,
Yeah.
right?
The
And
big
so,
moment. I said the big moment. He was in the big moment already, even if it was a practice.
because, and what did that do when he created his practices to be at that level? Guess what happened when he was on stage? It was easy.
Yeah.
It was easy. And so for those who say, I've tried meditation, I've tried this, I've tried that, how committed and how much did you really understand to do in those moments, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to going through the motions, which we, with habit, can do that. And I would just offer that tip or suggestion, right? And there's many ways to meditate, there's many ways to do anything, right?
Yeah.
And what we just described, but to truly realize, that, we now know neuroplasticity. We know what it takes to change habits that don't serve to habits that do.
Yeah.
Practice,
Yeah.
practice. And what are you practicing and how are you practicing, etc.
Yeah. I love it.
Anything is possible. Anything is possible.
Anything is absolutely possible. Yeah. We just have to put our mind to it and put ourselves in that position. And I love, I was just talking with one of my daughter's friends recently, and I was talking about she wasn't able to play soccer and she plays soccer, but she was having to sit out for a little while. And I was like, imagine yourself there, like visualize yourself out on the soccer field and vision yourself running and kicking the ball and doing all the things. I'm like, you don't always have to practice doing it. Sometimes just visualizing yourself doing it. I know some of like our greatest basketball players
Exactly. We
would
know how
visualize themselves taking shots, and that was part of what got them to be so good at what they do.
the best coaches know that.
Yeah.
That's not a secret.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it was the Seattle Seahawks coach whose name I can't remember right now. Yeah, he got them to, I can't
Yeah.
remember what year they won the big whatever Super Bowl, but yeah, that's exactly. So there are no mysteries anymore.
Nope.
There's not, gee, how do I do that? No, we have people out there doing it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll just leave with Steve Jobs' quote, it's the crazy ones. There's a quote that I'll only remember the end of it, the crazy ones, some of them, some people call these people who are misfits or unusual ones as crazy, but, we see them as the because the ones who believe they can change the world, so change the world is the only ones who can,
Yeah.
are the ones who can.
Yeah.
So, yeah, be crazy.
Yep. I'm with you. All right. Before we wrap up, I always love to go into a couple rapid fire questions at the end before we wrap up. So I'm curious, what is on your bookshelf right now that you're reading, or is there something you're binge watching on TV?
Don't binge watch on TV. Oh goodness, I just actually, it's about patriarchy, how it's time for women. It's our time, from patriarchy to paradise.
Mm. Okay.
That's what I'm reading and seeing how history has played a role and how it's our time, which it certainly is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
That was only the next one is when Michele needs to relax and reset and recharge, what do you like to do? Where do you like to go?
Two very different things. I'm only a few minutes from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I love to travel. So this is a huge museum, many blocks wide. And so going there is like going to China, going to India, going into prehistoric times. I mean, it's a wonderful place. So I get off my computer, hop on my subway, and within 5 minutes I'm there. And I just love to travel and learn and grow. And when I'm not doing that, the other thing quite frankly, it's a half a block from my house, is I go to the gym. And I go to a very specific part of the gym. There's a part with machines, and there's another part that has classes. And a lot of the classes are yoga or Zumba, like that. There's weightlifting too. And I've chosen the machines, and I've come, and mostly men are there. And I just have enjoyed the willingness for them to help me, to, those who are pressing 400 pounds. I'm not pressing 400. and but I'm getting much, much stronger each time I go. And I just have to say, again, with an openness, with a hello, and people come over to me after I've spoken to them and I've totally forgotten, and they'll say, "Oh, hi again." And I went, "Oh, hi," and not remember. And I, just again say, put yourself out there and not necessarily go where the other women are going, just for comfort, right? So yeah, those are two answers to your questions that are very, very different.
Yeah, I love it. I love the different answers and the different the different questions bring up different pieces from different people, and I love just hearing what people have to say. Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining me. Before we leave, I know people are going to want to reach out and connect with you. Where's the best place for them to go to connect?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really the best. So it's Michele Risa. My name is, I believe, there
Yep.
on the screen. And I don't think there's more than one of us and on LinkedIn. And if they'd like to email me, I'll just say it. It's very simple, just my first initial last name 11 at Gmail. So I'll say it very quickly, MRISA11 at gmail.com. Welcome to email me as well. But you'll learn more about me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, that's a wrap, everybody, of another amazing episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. If you're new here, please hit subscribe. We'd love for you to join the community and hang out. And if you are looking for support for growing your business or speaking up and stepping into the version of yourself that you are, you can always head over to darleneholly.com and learn more about the work that I do with my clients. And as always, remember, I believe in you. You're allowed to stand out. You're allowed to shine. You're allowed to be you. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, darling.